My name is MoneyMitch26. I'm going to introduce the next guest who's been around in this community since proper COVID times. There's someone that started using virtual reality as like a replacement, I guess, for being able to go outside, and then fell in love with it. Their life revolved around Echo. It became part of the life of the family members around them, 2 sons and a husband, also playing the game, also being heavily involved. This person has built communities within Echo and is now one of the best casters that we have, one of the most consistent, clearly, and maybe not the most cast, but definitely up there, definitely pushing. The work they're putting into the community to make it happen. This person has been on stage at events like AWE, speaking about virtual reality. This is a real passion for them, and they've dived headfirst into it. The event of the game, Shutdown, we speak about it quite extensively in this episode, is a bit of a shock to the system, because they kind of had a roadmap in front of them which heavily involved this game as being shut down. With that game gone, it's a real like sweep off your feet moment of like, oh, damn. Personally, I think this person has an amazing future in the virtual gaming or even just the virtual reality industry. As a speaker, they definitely have experience that's going to be highly valuable as this industry moves on. A lot of what makes Echo what it is isn't found anywhere else yet. There's nowhere else that has that. It's not a VR version of this, a VR version of that. It's VR as it should be, VR gaming, and the absence of it is causing a lot of grief. I'm rambling. Let's get into it. This is Jeepgirlz. Let's get to it. Jeepgirlz. Hi, how are you?
I'm great, Money Mitch. How are you?
I'm great as well. I love your radio voice. I know I've said this before, and I mean it.
Aw, thank you.
Have you done like presenting in any way before Echo? Do you have like a past in radio or anything like that?
I have a past in television.
Oh, right, that makes sense.
Mildly, yes.
Okay, cool. Well, let's get into it then. So, what was your life before Echo? What were you doing before it?
What have I not done?
Ah.
I was a school teacher.
Oh, wow.
I have owned a dance school in the past. I was a gymnastics coach. I was the program director for a youth soccer organization and competitive program for that. I ran a production company of my own, photography and video, for almost 20 years. And then, of course, COVID hit and everything stopped cold. A few months into COVID, of course, we ended up finding Oculus.
Because this is what we're going to be speaking about most of the time, but just before we go down that rabbit hole of like Echo and everything that involves that, so you were running the company, was it like a one-man band? Was it just you? Or did you have like
It was just
team?
me, and I would have teams join me for different events. So depending upon what the event was, if I needed more cameras, I had 6 very nice cameras that I operated.
Yeah.
So if I had to have something that was moving and not stationary, I had a couple of very competent crew members that could come on and help me with that, but I did all of the editing and everything by myself.
Right. And would you be renting out the hardware, or was it more, so you would do it all? So someone would hire you, you'd go to the event, you'd do the recording, you'd go back, do the editing, review it with them, and they give them a finished
product.
And
build it into the finished product, yep. And for a long time we did DVDs, and then we ended up switching over to flash drives and that kind of thing. So, yeah.
Wow.
I have a lot of equipment.
Yeah, and you've got experience with tech. You're quite a techie person.
Yeah, very much so.
Nice. Did you grow up with video games?
Yeah, in fact, okay, everybody knows I'm old anyway, but it started with the Atari back in the 80s.
Nice.
And it was one of those things that you knew when Dad got home from work, you were off because he was playing. And that, of course, we did that for years and years, and then moved into PCs, and we didn't have the internet. You just had PC games, and you had to code things and build things that way. So did that, and then it kind of grew and progressed, and kind of got back into it with the Red Alert, Command and Conquer, all that series, and Myst.
Wow,
yeah,
right.
yeah, and some good things there, Commander Keen and all of that, Wolfenstein. So yeah, and then wound up here
And what did your dad
somehow.
do? Was he
What
working in
did he?
tech as well? Was he working at
No,
tech when you were younger?
he
No,
was not. He,
just loved
he
games.
owned his own air conditioning and refrigeration company that
Right.
operated all over the South, and used to have contracts with some pretty major convenience stores across the southeast region of the United States.
Right.
So, yeah, just
Cool.
loved it. So,
And your mum as well? Was she a bit of entrepreneur as well?
no, not at all.
No.
My mom was a stay-at-home mom, took fantastic care of us for many, many years. Fell in love actually with Wolfenstein, and that was probably the only game that I can ever think of that she played, but she loved that game. So, yeah.
Right. And did you
So
grow up
now
with
she
siblings
supports
that
us
played games
and
as
she
well?
watches us. Yeah, my brother was into it a pretty good bit as well. He now runs his own production company also here in the South.
Right. So are you back up and running with the production company, or are you doing something
No,
else
I
now?
actually closed it in 2022.
Okay.
I was at a point where I had to make a decision. Was I going to reinvest a lot of money into upgrading all of my equipment, or was
Yeah.
I going to close it? And I just, my passion wasn't there anymore for it. So I let it go.
And where's your passion now?
In VR, I think.
Yes. Yeah, because we've
Yeah.
had conversations. So I messaged you the other day and I was like, hey, do you want to do a podcast? And you were like, yes, 100%. But we've spoken before about it because I think you'd seen the podcast months ago. And you were like, yeah, this is really cool. I'm doing the same thing as well. And I looked at, you were doing some videos for NEPA as well. You were involved with NEPA.
I did.
So,
I was with NEPA for a while, about 8 months, where I worked for them through in various things and wound up in production and became their host for the NEPA One Pro series. And that was a lot of fun. And just it decided to part ways with them as it wasn't something that was the direction that I wanted to continue. So ended up being a caster then for VRML shortly thereafter, which I love. I passionately love casting Echo Arena matches. In fact, I love casting them more than I love playing them. But shh, don't tell.
okay, so let's go to it. So 2020,
2020.
pandemic, March 2020, pandemic. You're now, okay, this is happening. You said you got an Oculus. Do you want to tell that story? Like how you first got
Sure.
into VR?
Well, it wasn't as early as I wish it was. I wish I would
Right.
have been in the ground level, with some of the OGs. But I wasn't. I was at that point in time probably watching Tiger King, which was a mistake. Uh, but who didn't? And if you say you didn't, you probably are lying. But no, the pandemic came and went, and we were in the end of that year. And
Yep.
one of my sons got an Oculus, and he was like, "You got to check this out. This is the coolest thing." And my other son checked it out, and he was like, "Oh, I've got the money. I'm buying one." And then I was like, "Okay, I gotta check this out." And I put it on, and I think the first thing I watched was the Jurassic Park mini movies,
Right.
and I was in awe. I mean, like we had a PlayStation VR in the past, but this was different, right? This was, I mean, I could stand and there were no cables. I wasn't hooked to anything. How am I doing this? It was amazing. And shortly thereafter, we found Echo, and I put on the headset and I started playing, and I turned it off, and I was sick for 2 days, like totally motion sick. It was
No way.
horrible. And my boys kept playing it, and they were like, "Oh man, you're really missing out." And I could hear them laughing and enjoying themselves, and I was like, "Okay, I'm kind of being left behind, and I really want to do this with them." So I would put it on and get in for one pub, and then I'd take it off. And then the next time I would play, I would put it on, play two pubs, and take it off. And then it just continued to increase like that. And they invited me to join them on a party league team, and I said, "Sure, that sounds like fun." So we ended up doing that, and that was the start of it, and I fell in love with it.
Was this all kind of like a very short amount of time from, because for some people they discover VR, they get into VR, they go into this, like they become an enthusiast for the technology, and then at some point along the road they find Echo, they really get into Echo, and then that's like the next step of involvement, right? They start getting involved with the Echo community, and that's the whole other story. Was that pretty much the same thing for you?
Yeah, the end of December was the first Oculus came into our house, and by February, Just 2 months later, we had 4 within the house because we bought my husband one for his birthday, which is in February. So by then we had 4. So it was a pretty fast progression. I did Freshman Frenzy in February, or it may have been in early March, I don't recall. And then we launched Echomania a month later, in April of 2021, and exploded with what we called King of the Hill, which was a really fun tournament that we did. It was the first tournament thing like that I had ever run, and it was a very large undertaking, but it was a lot of fun and a very, very good learning experience. And that was actually how I got thrust into casting. We had asked a couple of casters to come in and cast for us, and they were like, "Oh yeah, everybody's always agreeable until you get to the push comes to shove, and then things come up." And we had said, "Hey, would you cast matches for us?" And they were like, "Oh yeah, that sounds great." And then when it came time to it, they were like, "Oh well, I've got other things," which of course, we're very busy in VR, and everybody's got a lot going on. And I was like, "Well, I can at least stream it." And I streamed a match, and I was like, okay, I'm just sitting here watching this game. And I was like, well, at least being streamed is better than not having anything, right? And then I said like 2 words. I was like, oh, and that was a goal by the blue team. Yeah, I didn't know what I was really talking about very much. And I had a member of the Echomania community come to me and say, Jeep, you can do this. And that player, and actually his name was Makray. And he was like, you've got this, you can do it. And I was like, you know what? I can. I was a theater junkie. I was a dancer. I was, an actress. I could do all of this. No big deal. And I was like, I'm just going to commit. I'm going to pretend for a minute that I'm this role as a caster of this game. And that's what I did. And later on, Makray ended up being on my team, and we had a comical moment about it where I realized that he was the one that had pushed me into casting.
So you mentioned a time where the early days of Echomania. So that's a community I haven't been heavily involved with, but I've been aware of it. It's quite large, right? It's not larger than Tyro. It's that kind of size.
Well, we have about 600 members.
Right.
We were going to launch a King of the Hill 2 this past year, and there ended up being a lot of conflict, and we had people coming in who had never been a part of the Echomania community, and we run it in a way that it's a very tight ship, so to speak. It was one of those servers that my objective as a mother was that if I see my kid looking at this server, I want to be proud that they're in it. Does that make sense? I didn't want it to be a server where if your mom saw over your shoulder what was being said, you were going to get in trouble. I wanted it to be a family-friendly place because I was there with my kids.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make sure that was available if a family wanted to join it, if dad and son wanted to join it, or mom and son, or mom and daughter, whatever, wanted to be a part of it. They were both welcome there, and it was a safe kind of environment. So
yeah, I like it because I've spoken to other people that are parents on this show, and I love to talk about this. So I was speaking to Gilligan kind of recently, and his daughter's 12, so she's going to be the age now where she's going to be coming in, the internet in general, but she's going to be going into VR. And I asked, like, how do you feel about that? Like, how are you going to manage that stage of her development, right? She's young and impressionable.
Yeah.
Do you want to put her into an Echo pub? How are you going to manage that?
No.
But it sounds like you've gone ahead. You've cleared the way. Let me tidy this up first before my boys sit.
Well, that was my objective was to provide that safe place where you knew you weren't going to see a bunch of nasty memes and a bunch of bad jokes and that kind of thing. It was going to be something that your grandma would be proud of you being involved in this community type of a thing.
And your boys they're not that young, are they? They're like 16, 17?
Or are they even older? One of them is older. He's an adult and living on his own at this point, and the other one is about to be 17. Yeah.
So you're not too worried about them, right?
No.
Like they know what's right and what's wrong. And, you know what I mean? They're not too impressionable. They can go about and just understand what's toxic, what's not.
Right.
And think for themselves, right?
Yes.
But do you have any thoughts on that? Like having gone in and made those communities, but also understand that your boys are going to go off and do what they want.
Well, and that's the thing, right? You can only teach them, and you have to hope that what you taught sticks. Some of it will, some of it won't. They've got to make their own decisions. They've got to find their own ways. And that's the kind of thing that we have to hope and provide those opportunities that they can build on that and build on the lessons that we teach. And, you know, you hear a lot in pubs. You hear a lot when somebody is in the next room playing Echo. You hear a lot of the way they interact with other people. And you have to just hope that it's not going to be toxic. And, you know, I think a lot of parents don't necessarily know what their kids are involved in here. And I have always been one that I'm like, invite your parents to watch the stream. Let them see what this is that you're doing. You know, that's part of why I love casting. You can tell your mom, hey, watch this game, and at least you'll get to hear my name, you know, as a kid. It's because it's not your typical sport. It's not your typical, let's go sit on the side of the soccer field and cheer. This is the only way you get to see this game is if we broadcast it.
Yeah,
So
that's fair.
now that back to the toxicity part, you know, I don't really know with having someone younger coming into this, the best way to protect them. I always advocate for the younger ones. If there's somebody in a lobby or in an arena or a pub that is being obnoxious towards somebody, I mean, I've been in an arena with 6 friends and we have just 2 random people in pubs, and one of the two will start being toxic, and my entire team, you know, or group that I'm with is like, hey, whoa, no, don't do that. And we end up with a lot of pubs where people are like, wow, you guys were actually nice. Like, that's, you know, thanks. I had a lot of fun type of a thing. So hopefully by continuing to be positive to people and continuing to support them and being nice to other people in the arena, that has a tendency to make them realize, you know, that made me feel really good when that person was nice to me and they were on the other team and said, hey, good job for that shot I just made. Maybe I can spread some of that.
For you, so you mentioned about playing the role of a caster.
Yes.
And now what you're describing is playing the role of a mother, right? Particularly with your own children. Do you feel that extend to other people, or is it more that you just being a nice person? Hey, I'm a nice person. Everyone, let's just play nice.
I try to just be myself. I'm the type of person that if I am out in public and I see somebody with cute shoes, I'm going to say, oh my gosh, your shoes are really cute. And it'll be a complete stranger. Or if somebody, you know, has a really cute haircut, hey, you know, I love your hair, or that color looks great on you, or whatever. That's just what I do anyways. So I try to let that bleed into the arena. I try to be myself in the arena because I don't want to not be myself, you know? And that's the same way with anybody. But you should be true to who you are. You shouldn't come into the arena and be a jerk just because you have the opportunity to be a jerk. If you're not a jerk in real life, don't be a jerk in the arena. You know, be true to who you are.
What if someone is a jerk?
Well,
just be yourself. Okay.
Yeah, just be yourself as long as you're not a jerk. I don't know. That's a great question. I don't know.
There's a spectrum, right?
There are some people who are just that way, you know. There's just, I don't know. There's room for everybody. Just, you know, I don't have to love the way you play. I don't have to love the way you behave in an arena. I'm still going to do what I do.
So we touched on Echo Mania a little bit. I'm keen to revisit it just because personally I don't know much about it. Is there a future with it? Is it still growing in some kind of direction? Did it have a particular moment in the past? Or is it something that's sort of like you're moving on from?
I think at this point it's pretty stagnant.
Right.
It was so King of the Hill was an idea that my boys came up with, and the idea of it was you have a group of teams and you fight each other to get to the top.
Yeah.
And once you're at the top, you have to stay at the top, and you start getting a point deficit every time you play. And you had to stay and hold that top position for 7 matches. So once you worked your way up, If you lost, you dropped all the way back down to the bottom.
Uh-huh.
If you won, you got to stay there until you lost. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work on my part on the organizational side, but we had a fantastic mod team at the time. A lot of adults on the mod team, and a lot of people who we could share the idea and the concept and the vision of Ecomania with, and they supported it and they wanted to build it. And we ended up bringing it back this year and did our own version of Freshman Frenzy, which was where we brought in players who had never played Echo, who had just gotten a headset for Christmas, for example, and we assigned them a coach, and the coach coached them for a week, and then they played a game at the end of the week against each other, and we cast it, and that was a lot of fun. Also a lot of work. A lot of these fantastic things that people do are a ton of work. And it's interesting to see, because you learn a different level of gratitude for people who put things on when you have put something on your own. Just like with the lands, we've done several lands, and it's so much fun, and we just get to show up on Thursday or Friday, enjoy the mud out of it, and then we go home and it's done and it's over. And there are people who have poured months and months and months of work and time and effort and money into different events. So it's that same kind of thing. But Ecomania, I feel like, is at this point stagnant, especially as of January 31st.
Okay, so let's go into casting then. So you mentioned it came about when you were streaming the matches from Ecomania. How did it go from that to being one of the most consistent casters in VRML?
So after Ecomania, after I started casting for Ecomania, and I'd been doing that consistently for a couple of months, I didn't have a VRML team. I didn't even know about VRML for a couple of weeks after that. And we were on a road trip, my family and I had just seen Oliver Ending's TikTok that said the best way to learn Echo is to make a team.
Right.
And I was like, you know what? I'm going to make a team. No idea what I was doing. Never been a captain. Like I said, I was a dancer. Never played team sports. Like, that was not in my wheelhouse. That was not in my world. I had been a director of a soccer program, but that was more of, being on the organizational side of things. And as far as being a player, never been a team sport. Certainly never been a captain, so I really had no idea what I was doing. Made a VRML team. That was the 4th of July. And played through the season. That was season 4. Had already started working for NEPA at that point, becoming their host. And when I left that, I worked with Viridis for a couple of weeks. And then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to submit an application to VRML and see what happens. Because I enjoyed that aspect. I really liked doing some of the things that I had been doing. And I didn't feel at that point that we were going to bring back Ecomania in the capacity that I would be able to really flourish with it and to really enjoy it. So I submitted to VRML, and in that first season that I was a caster for VRML, I cast 13 matches. That was it, the whole season. I was just kind of dipping my toes into, and getting and learning the ropes, so to speak. And then season 6 came about, and I did, I believe, 91 matches. My goal had been 100. I didn't quite make it.
Wow, that's a lot.
It is, and that's not counting, like finals and Challenger Cups and things like that. That was just regular season matches. And then, of course, this season started, and I was gung-ho, and we were going, and I was clocking about 20 matches, 15 or so matches a week. Oof. And then January 31st hit.
Yeah.
And it kind of flipped everybody on their heads. So I'm still trying to do it as consistently as possible. It's just there's so much stuff going on, and I feel like everybody's scrambling. I feel like we're all in this rat race to figure out where we're going and what we're going to do. And I feel like I am in that same position. I'm looking at it going, I don't want to not be involved with the VR community. I want to continue forward with the VR community. So how can I do that? In what way can I contribute? I'm not a programmer. I'm not a coder. I'm just me. So how can I contribute? What
Yeah.
can I do to support, and what can I do to make sure that we can all still stay in touch and contact and sharing the information as it comes about to find whatever's going to be next.
Yeah, let's talk about it. So 31st of January, the game was announced that they're shutting it down. How was that initially when you first heard that? Did you just log off for a couple of weeks? Did you try and keep playing, keep the lights on?
After I stopped crying, which I know sounds ridiculous. You're an
Not at
adult
all.
and you're crying over a video game. And it's not necessarily the game, right? It's so much bigger than the game.
Yeah.
So much bigger than the game. So yeah, after the initial shock wore off, I was mad, very, very, very angry,
Yeah.
as a lot of us were, and some of us still are very, very angry, which is fine. Everybody proceeds at different paces. But after I became unangry, which I'm still not completely not salty. I have to be honest. Just my main thing was quickly to turn to say a lot of these younger people in the Echo community have never experienced a loss.
Right.
And
Okay.
not a loss like this. And my thought was, what can I do to ease that? And I think that week that it was announced, I probably cast 17, 18 matches. And I made an objective for myself, and that was to see how many teams I could cast, how many different teams. And I think I'm at 118 teams so far this season that I've cast.
Wow.
So really just trying to encourage people to continue to play and encourage people to continue just enjoying it and making the most of what we have, of the time we have left, because that's all we can do. I related it to, say that I found out my best friend was going to die in 6 months. What would I do? Would I be mad at them and not have anything to do with them? Or would I make the most of it? We're going road tripping. We're going to do everything we possibly can to enjoy that time together and to make the best memories we can. And that's kind of where my brain settled in on how to deal with this, was to make the best of it and encourage other people to play it and just have a good time with it and absorb it.
And how are you feeling today? So at time of recording, 19th of March, are you still like in that anger mode, would you say? Or are you past that? Are you thinking differently now?
I'm
Or
mad
is
at
it
certain
still-
people.
Okay. The anger's
I'm mad
directed.
at certain people. No, the majority of it, honestly, is just my team stuck together. We've been together since the end of season 5, same group of people, and really just to savor the time with them in the arena, and play pubs with as many people as I can play pubs with, and just continue to build those relationships, because the stronger the relationships are during this time that we have uncertainty, the better off we'll be, because we have those ties and those connections to people. And you never know what is going to come from a connection that you make in these games. There are some brilliant people involved in Echo Arena. And not just in Echo Arena, but in VR in general, some absolutely brilliant minds. You never know who is going to be, in the arena with you. So you might get to meet some pretty cool people. And I've met a lot of great people that you and I, for example, would have never crossed paths had it not been for VR.
The first time I saw you, you were doing a cast with Reddit Worm, and you were doing a range of accents.
That's one of my favorite casts of all time. He and I were, that was a great day. And I don't even know how it came about. We were talking about something, and I said something about doing an English accent, and he was like, "Oh, let me hear it." So I started doing an English accent, then he started doing a Southern accent, and we were bouncing all over the place. And it was, oh my God, it was so much fun. I've never laughed so hard during a cast in my life.
So would
It
you
was a
say
great one.
casting is what you're focusing on at the moment? So just like the immediate future Is you're going to try
Yeah.
and aim for this? Is it 20 casts you're aiming for a week? Or just around
No,
about
I'm trying to just get as many teams as possible. And I think
Right.
I'm sitting at 66, I think, cast as of right now for this season. It's slowed down recently because I've had an incident with one of my dogs, but that she's needed a lot of care. So I can't necessarily escape upstairs to my office, because if I go upstairs, she tries to follow me, and she's not in a position right now where she can move very well. So I'm bound time wise on what I can slip away for, but trying my best to get as many in as possible.
Okay. So looking forward, it sounds like it's a difficult thing to speak about because we just don't know. We don't know what it's going to look like. We don't know
there's
what
a lot
other
of
kind of
uncertainty.
titles are going to be out. What if you had to pick? If you could just magically wave a wand and see exactly what you're going to be doing in a year's time, what do you see yourself having a full-time job, a career in something VR related? Or do you see yourself as involved as you are now, which is like casting in some kind of way? Or do you see yourself moving on to something else that you don't know yet? What's your immediate reaction to bringing that topic up?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah, that's a valid answer. You just don't know.
You just don't know. There's just so much certain. Now, if I could wave a magic wand, right, and have anything I wanted, I would have the version of Echo Arena that this was meant to be. Right. There were a lot of things that we're hearing that it could have been, and plans were, and this kind of thing. And we know there haven't been many changes made to the game, many upgrades made to the game. So my magic wand would be that this would be what it was intended to be, and that we would all be here, and we would be casting, and we would be thriving in the game. We know that's not going to happen. So knowing that, like you and I were talking about the podcast, I've launched this podcast, which the hope is to discuss how different avenues are using VR, anything VR related. We've seen, in fact, through connections that I've made through Echo, I've made a lot of connections with people who are involved in medicine and VR, people who are involved in education and VR, and how those things all cross over. And it's not really something that I have thought much about, because to me, VR is gaming, That's what I use it for. I don't use it for productivity. I don't use it for social things. It's literally just a gaming device to me. And I know there's so much more out there. And if I don't know that, there's bound to be other people who don't realize what all is involved. I was reading recently that they have developed games that you can do through VR that show the triggers that you may have, the flags that you may have for Alzheimer's disease. So they're able to identify things like that much earlier than they would have. And we're seeing things like that develop with training. I recently was reading about how NASA had been using VR to train astronauts, and just such a wide variety of uses for VR. So that's kind of where I am right now. Is I'm holding out hope for another game. Because we have other games. We have Ultimex, and we have Blast On, and all these fantastic other VR games. This is different. This is a team sport. This is not just one person against one person. It's not just a shooter game. It's so complex and so deep that I'm holding out for the future, for what this is going to turn into. And what's wild to me is we've got all of these groups that have started other games that probably wouldn't have started other games had Meta not canceled Echo. So although it's short term to say, but it might be that the shutdown spawned or spurred on the future of what this is going to turn into. And if we've got 4 or 5 different groups of teams out there working on something like this now that had not been working on this 3 months ago,
Yeah.
I think that's pretty cool.
What is lost when this game shuts down?
Ooh.
I know. So while you're thinking about that, I'll give you some context of where this question's coming from. I'm thinking about it because you just said that you're starting this class and you're talking about other applications for VR, speaking about NASA and productivity and training and Alzheimer's and things like this. And you kind of said it in this way, and then you started talking about gaming. You started and like all this, and like your energy, how you felt about those words were so much different. And I feel like, I mean, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I feel like you're kind of given the sensible next step that you're not passionate about, but it's like, oh, I guess this is the next, what's it going to be? Now Echo's gone. So what
That's
is
a very
gone?
good read.
What's gone?
That's a very good read. I don't know. Echo's different.
What does another project / title / game need to have? Does that help with the question? What does the next project have to correctly replace or to allow people to move on to? That doesn't exist elsewhere or is rare elsewhere.
I don't know. I mean, the thing is this. I have bought just about every popular VR game that comes out.
Right.
And I try them out, and I go in and I play it maybe for an hour, maybe 3 or 4 times to give it the fair shot. And I always come back to Echo. There's something about it, and having to work through the progression of skills, and we worked our way up. I know there's a lot of upper level players that said to me, I've never played bronze. And I'm like, well, yay for you, but at the same point in time, I kind of feel bad for you, because as we've worked up, we have not just grown as a team, but you have to meet a certain level of skill to be able to progress through, right? And although in other games you have the same kind of thing, you have skill progressions that you have to go through, and you have different things you have to be able to do in order to continue to advance. I don't know. I feel like the competition is just different. I feel like this is more of a real life sport than anything else out there. It's very physical. I've watched my kids play, and I just sit there and I'm amazed. Like, to watch them in real life, and we see the same thing at land, right? You see them jump, and you see them duck, and you see them just, the movements are so incredibly quick and can be so physical that it's not like, I mean, you can watch them play Population 1 or watch them play Contractors or whatever, and it's a very different set of movements. It's not nearly as physical. It's not the VR sport that this is. And I mean, for somebody like me, like I said, I was never on a team. I never played a team sport. That wasn't something that I had. And that might be part of why I love it so, because it has given me something that I didn't have. It's given me something that I never got to do. And it's let me do that. And I think that's a big part of it when you say what is lost. What is lost is this, and what is lost is the community, because right now we're a pretty tight-knit community for the most part. We have this circle that is here, and then we have a lot of little kind of outliers of different little groups that branch off of that, but the majority of it crosses and intermingles. And you mentioned Tyro. There's a large chunk of the community that's involved in VRML. They're involved in Tyro. It's the same spindles of people that connect.
Yeah.
And I think that is what's going to be lost. And my fear is, with so many of these other pop-ups that are out there that are coming up, I think they're labeling them copycats right now, is that it's going to splinter the community. That's my biggest fear, is that you're going to have, if we end up with Sir Dimwee goes over here and Palador goes over there and you're over here and I'm over there, it's a different world, right? So I think the important thing is that we figure out how to keep that circle going. And it's fine to have splinters, right? Because we do see that now. We see Tyro has had, they have different activities going for different games and game nights and that kind of thing. And a lot of the communities, Cookie Commanders are the same way. They not only do Echo, but they get together and do walkabout mini golf and different things. But I think that there's got to be a way that we say, hey, let's stick together. And I don't know how to do that.
This is really cool because you're speaking from different perspectives. You're speaking from different elements of the game. So you're speaking as a player, going from being bronze and working your way up. You're speaking about the community, Echo Mania, and other communities as well, and just being involved and making things happen, talking about the people that organize the LAN events and put all that work in, and then we get to enjoy that. And you're speaking as a caster as well. It's actually quite nice to have all of those different perspectives. It's really cool.
Well, that's good because I feel like I'm all over the map.
Yeah, I think that's my job, right? To put the pieces together.
Wrangle it. You'll wrangle it. Puzzle master.
What? So I have a question that I often ask people, like towards like the middle, towards the end of the interview, which is, what are you curious about? But I don't feel that's directed enough at the moment, because you've kind of answered it. And also you haven't answered it deliberately, saying, I don't know what I want to do next. I don't know what the future holds. So, I mean, you can try and answer that, but I feel it's a bit of a...
No, I have no idea. And I've talked with some people that I consider to be advisor-like within the community, that I respect greatly, to say, what do I do? I don't know what to do. I don't play first-person shooter games. I suck so bad at them. I'm so bad at them. And in order to cast them, I feel like you have to play them, because I feel like you need to know at that depth what the game is about. And, the best way to do it is to play it. I'm a hands-on learner. I learn by doing. And in order for me to cast a game, I need to love it. I need to feel passionate about it. I need to be able to get excited about it and to share that excitement. And first-person shooters are not necessarily where I'm going to be. And I do know that much, but I have had people say to me, don't just focus on one game. Like, don't put all your eggs in that basket, so to speak, right? Because then something like this happens and you go, I don't know, I have no idea what I'm doing next. But I know that I've got a couple months to figure it out, and I know that in the meantime, I will do everything I can for Echo and for the Echo community, and I know that this is hard for a lot of people, and especially the ones that we see getting angry about it in different Discord servers, to understand this is part of the grief, right? You might not realize that that's why you're mad, but I know that that's why you're mad, and I can see, as somebody who has been through great loss, that's where you are.
Well, something to put into perspective as well. If a kid is playing the game and they're 17 years old, they've spent like a good portion of their life with this game and probably playing it quite a lot, right? It's as if they've grown up playing football, playing soccer.
Right.
And then suddenly, oh, you're not allowed to play soccer ever again. It's gone.
And not just that you can't play it, right? There's no soccer balls. There's no cleats. Yeah. You can't even go kick it in your backyard. Like, it is poof, gone. And that's another thing. It's that age group that you just spoke about, that 16, 17-year-old age group. You've got to think back to when COVID hit. Schools stopped. Sports stopped. There was nothing. And a lot of them ended up here. And the number of players that I have met that have been basketball players, a lot of soccer players, different athletes, baseball players, football players, whatever it may be, play this. And I think that I feel like this was kind of their replacement for those years of sports that they lost, because they missed out on a big chunk of their teenage life in sports that should have been there for them, and they weren't. I mean, almost 2 years. And that's huge for somebody who's 15, 16, 17 years old to lose. So I feel like you said, it's that same kind of thing. And I was talking to my dad about it because my dad watches the games when we play them. And we were talking about it, and he said, well, could you imagine though, because him not playing it, he very much relates it to other sports. And he said, could you imagine though, a group of kids show up to their local park to play baseball, and they get there and the gate's locked. You're not allowed to go in. The park has been demolished, and there are no baseballs, no bats, no gloves anywhere on the planet to be found. All they have of it is their memory and videos and pictures.
So you're describing it as a replacement, but it's more than that, right? It's not like, okay, we needed it while we couldn't go outside and play games. Now we can go out and play games again. We don't need it anymore, right? Because that's the narrative then, if you're describing it as a replacement.
Right. But I think it's may have started as a replacement, but evolved very much into a life of its own. And I think it's deep in a lot of people's hearts. And I know the other adults in the community, like some of the ones I was telling you about, that I feel like are advisors that I talk to about some of this stuff. I think we're all kind of in the same position. We're all sitting here going, well, hey, what are you going to be doing at the end of this year? I don't know. What are you going to be? I don't know. Yeah, no, I just, dude, I don't know. I don't know.
It's just surreal, isn't it? It's because it's really cliche to say, but it's because we're players, it's very real. These are very real relationships. They're very, to us right now, this is real, where we are now.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's virtual, but at some point that just becomes semantics, right? We're having this conversation now. Go on.
When I score a goal, so I'm a goalie. Very rarely do I actually take a shot on goal. When I score on a goal and my entire team cheers for me and they run up to me in the arena and hug me, that is very, very real. Or if I'm in the goal and I save this incredible shot that should have gone in and it was an incredible save, that feeling that's in my chest is a very real feeling. It's not just a virtual feeling. It is very, very real. So although the game itself, this arena, as beautiful as it is very much a virtual place, the people in here, you, me, right now, my team, when we're together, and the feelings that you have are very real. And that is, I think, I think that's one of the most interesting parts of being involved in something like this and being involved in VR, is the feelings are very real. And somebody makes me mad in the arena, that's a very real anger that's inside of me, that, when some kid keeps just being atrocious, whether they're just creaming me on goals and just, slam dunking nonstop, or if they're being rude or whatever, those are very real feelings. So although the game might be virtual, the feelings and the humans inside the headsets are very real.
I'm going to try my curiosity question again.
Okay.
What are you curious about outside of Echo?
What do you mean?
Or VR? As in,
For
what's
VR?
going on recently in 2023 for you? What else has changed in your life? What else is on the horizon? What are you interested in other than virtual reality?
What am I? Oh, that's your question, is what do I like to do outside of VR?
Well, no. When I say what are you curious about, it's like if you're just I don't know, walking to the car or something, what's coming into your mind? What are you how does that work? Or I wonder if this will happen at this point. And it could be technology related. It could be something completely else. It could be, I don't know. It's a pretty open question.
I think really, technology-wise, I'm just excited to see where this all goes. We've got new headsets coming out. The Quest 3 is coming out. Apple's bringing out their product. We've got the PlayStation VR that just released, PlayStation 2, VR 2 that just released. Really, I think it's just, where are we going with this? Are we going to turn into WALL-E? Or are we going to, continue to be, because one thing I really think about VR that's really cool over just traditional PC gaming or PlayStations or whatever is that it is active. You're physical. You're up on your feet. You're moving for the most part. I mean, I'm in a chair right now, but when I'm playing, I'm standing in the middle of my living room, and it's very much. It's not just I'm sitting at a computer for 2 or 3 hours playing a game. It's I'm throwing and I'm working and I'm moving and I'm stretching and I'm bending and all of this stuff, and I think that brings a different experience to it. And I think my biggest curiosity is honestly, where is this going to lead? Where is VR going? What's the future of it? Not just in gaming, but everywhere. And I mean, for me personally, gaming is a huge part of it because, I'm not going to college anytime soon. There's nothing I need to go inside the human heart to see. That's not going to be something that is a necessity for me. I'm not going to be looking at it for me personally and saying, oh, let me see how I'm going to walk in space. That's not going to be, I'm never going to be an astronaut. That's not in my wheelhouse. But it does affect my children, and it affects my grandchildren, and it affects their children, and continually. So I think I'm most curious to see where VR goes. What is the actual future? Because VR has been around for a minute, right? It's been around since the mid 60s. It was spoken about back in the 30s. So it's made some headway, and it's progressed rapidly. But where is it going?
So I've got a question that's kind of related. This will be the last question as well. Do you know about the Neuralink, Elon Musk's business where he puts a chip in your head?
Oh, yeah.
Chip or no chip?
No chip.
No chip?
No
That's a
chip.
quick answer. Ever?
No.
You'll never have that implanted in your brain?
No.
Do you want to give a reason?
Oh goodness! I think honestly, I'm trying to figure out what part of the answer actually makes sense. I'm scared it would blow up in my brain. I'm scared that it would like short everything out, and there's limited capacity in there anyways, and it would. I don't know. I'm just kind of freaked out by the whole concept. It might be something that 3 decades from now is a very real part of life. But right now, no. I'm freaked out that it would just short everything out. It would lobotomize the brain.
Yeah, fair play. Because some people say, I will do it, but not yet. Give it 5-10 years. Let me see that 1,000 people are fine. And then I'll have it.
See, my thing is not seeing the 1,000 people that are fine initially, but what happens to them 30 years down the road? What happens to them 50 years down the road, right? Because you can test something like that and say, oh yeah, look, they survived. They're perfectly safe. Oh yeah, look, they're thriving, doing great. Well, okay, but what happens 50 years from now to them? So there's a lot that would need to be tested in that first. But no, I would not in my lifetime.
Awesome. I feel like I could ask you more questions, but I do want to wrap this up because we've gone going for a little while. But yeah, it's been a pleasure to speak to you, Jeepgirlz. It's a good chance to get to know you as well, and I hope we'll have some class together. Very soon.
We should do that.
Nice one. Take care.
You too. Have a great one.